The desperate plea. In a shimmering crystal palace floating high above the serene emerald seas of Galar Prime, an emergency meeting of the Galari High Council was in session. The atmosphere was thick with tension and fear as holographic displays flickered with dire reports from across the Galari Confederation. Supreme Counselor Verum, an elder Galari with wispy silver-blue skin, called the chamber to order. Esteemed colleagues, we face a grave crisis. The Zorgan Imperium has launched a brutal invasion of our outlying systems. Their forces overwhelm our defenses. Millions of our people have perished. Murmurs of distress rippled through the gathered counselors, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in hues of anxiety and despair. The Galari were a peaceful race. Their leaf forms evolved for art and science rather than war. In nearly a millennium of interstellar travel, they had never encountered such naked aggression. Our diplomatic entreaties have been rebuked. Varum continued heavily. The Zorgans seek nothing but our subjugation and enslavement. I open the floor for suggestions on how we might counter this existential threat to our way of life. A babble of opinions echoed through the chamber. Expand the home guard. Disperse the population. Surrender and hope for mercy. With each passing moment, the Zorgan invasion fleet pressed closer to the heart of Galari space. Amidst the debate, a young voice rang out. We must seek aid from Earth. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to Zoltarine, a junior diplomat recently assigned to the council. Impossible, scoffed Counselor Xavin. The humans are primitives, a Deathworld species too dangerous to contact. Inviting them here would be inviting disaster. Zol stood firm, his skin shimmering with conviction. I have studied the humans in secret. Yes, they are volatile, but they are also ingenious and indomitable. No other species has mastered the art of war as they have. We need them. Verum considered Zol thoughtfully. The young diplomat had shown much promise, despite his unorthodox fascination with forbidden knowledge. Perhaps unorthodox thinking was exactly what this crisis demanded. The humans are a quarantined species for good reason, but these are desperate times, Varum said at last. Zoltarine, you may attempt to contact Earth, but do so with utmost discretion. The survival of our people may depend on it. As the council adjourned, Zol hurried to his private chambers, his mind buzzing with plans. He had to get a message through to Earth, a plea for salvation. He could only pray to the stars that the Deathworlders would prove to be the Galari's desperate hope, rather than the instrument of their destruction. Humanity answers the call. On Earth, in the bustling command center of the United Earth Defense Force, an alert flashed across the primary monitor. Priority ALERT. Alien transmission received. The deck erupted into activity, decades of training and preparation suddenly put to the test. Admiral Helena Novak strode onto the bridge, her presence commanding instant attention. A veteran of Earth's unification wars, Novak had earned her position through grit, determination, and a keen strategic mind. Report, she barked. What have we got? Lieutenant Samir Patil, the communications officer, looked up from his screen. It's a distress call, Admiral. From a species calling themselves the Galari. They say they're under attack by something called the Zorgan Imperium. Novik's eyes narrowed. The Galari. Never heard of them. How did they even know how to contact us? Earth had long known it was not alone in the cosmos, but a policy of cautious isolation had governed its interstellar relations. Unknown, ma'am, Patil replied. But their language matches one of the ciphers we've decrypted from previous interceptions. The transmission is authentic. Novak studied the star map, tracing the distant constellations from which the alien plea had come. A predatory smile tugged at her lips. Well then, it seems the universe has come knocking, and we're not ones to leave a neighbor in need, are we? Within an hour, Novak stood before the United Earth Council, the transmission from Galar Prime playing on a loop. There was fear in that alien voice, but also hope. Hope that the legendary warriors of Earth might be the salvation they so desperately needed. Counselors, this is the moment we've long prepared for, Novak declared. A chance to defend the defenseless, to prove our strength and compassion before the galactic stage. I propose we send a fleet to answer this plea, to show these Zorgans the error of their ways. Let them learn what it means to threaten those under humanity's protection. The debate was fierce but brief. Earth had not forgot the chaos and bloodshed of its past, but nor had it forgotten the values of valor and sacrifice that had finally united humanity. The vote was cast, the decision made. Earth would go to war. In the orbital shipyards of Titan, the EDS Indomitable came to life, the mighty warship's fusion engines blazing to full power. Around it, a fleet of humanity's finest vessels marshaled, cruisers and destroyers, battleships and carriers, each crewed by men and women eager to prove their mettle. As the Indomitable led the fleet out into the stars, humanity held its breath. Admiral Novak and her crews were leaping into the unknown, facing an enemy they had no intel on. But if anyone could face those odds and emerge victorious, it was the people of Earth, the Deathworlders of the galaxy. First contact. Supreme Counselor Verum stood nervously in the great landing court, flanked by his most trusted advisors. The sky above Gilar Prime was filled with a sight unlike any in Galari history. Massive, angular ships descending through the atmosphere, the sunlight glinting off their gunmetal hulls. The human fleet had arrived, and the moment of first contact was at hand. As the human shuttles touched down, and the doors slid open, Verum steeled himself for what terrors might emerge. The tales of human ferocity were well known, even if diplomatically unacknowledged. But the beams that strode down the ramps were not the monsters of Galari nightmare. They were tall, yes, and there was an undeniable aura of danger about them, a coiled readiness in their movements. But they were also diverse. They came in a spectrum of colors and shapes, a physical heterogeneity that was startling to the uniformly blue Galari. And leading them was a figure of undeniable command. Admiral Helena Novak. Verum stepped forward, his translator implant buzzing to life as he extended a slender hand in the human gesture of greeting. On behalf of the Galari Confederation, I welcome you to Galar Prime. We thank you for answering our call in our time of need. Novak clasped the offered hand firmly, her grip strong but controlled. On behalf of the United Earth Federation, we are honored to assist. I only wish we could have come in happier circumstances. What is the status of the Zorgan invasion? As if in answer, a klaxon began to blare, the sound echoing off the crystal spires of the city. On the horizon, a line of fire was rising into the sky, the unmistakable sign of orbital bombardment. They've broken through our outer defenses, Verum said, his voice trembling. We've never seen weapons like theirs. Our shields cannot hold. Novak's jaw clenched, her dark eyes hardening with resolve. They haven't seen weapons like ours either. Admiral to fleet, prepare for immediate counterattack. We'll show these bastards what happens when they pick on someone their own size. As the human ships lifted off to meet the Zorgan assault, Verum could only watch in awe and trepidation. The humans moved with a speed and surety that seemed impossible for their bulky frames. There was a fierce joy in them, a relish for the coming battle that was both terrifying and strangely heartening. For the first time since the invasion began, Verum allowed himself a flicker of hope. The Deathworlders had come, and the galaxy would tremble before their might. Part 4. Deathworlders visit the Zorgan horde. In the cold void above Galar Prime, the battle raged with a ferocity unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zorgan warships, monstrous things of jagged metal and pulsing plasma, swarmed like locusts, their weapons carving molten scars across the planetary shields. But they were not unopposed. The human fleet met the Zorgan assault head-on, their ships moving with a deadly grace that belied their size. The EDS Indomitable led the charge, its railguns fitting sun-bright tracers, its missile bays erupting with the fire of Earth's fury. On the bridge, Admiral Novak orchestrated the battle with calm precision, her orders crisp and unflinching even as the enemy fire raked her shields. This was what she had trained for, what humanity had prepared for, the chance to prove their strength, to defend the innocent against the monsters of the void. "Focus fire on their lead dreadnought," she commanded. "Shatter their command and control." Even as she spoke, a Zorgan cruiser slipped past her screen, its laser batteries flaring as it strafed the Indomitable's flank. The deck shuddered under the impact, consoles sparking and crew members stumbling. But there was no panic, no fear. The humans had been forged in the crucible of their own violent history. They knew how to take a hit and keep fighting. In the reactor room, Chief Engineer Manuela Rodriguez gritted her teeth as the ship groaned around her. Coolant pipes had ruptured, spewing scalding steam, and the temperature was climbing into the red. But she didn't flinch, her hands flying over the controls as she rerouted power, shunting every ounce of energy to the weapons and shields. "Hold together, baby," she murmured to the straining reactor. "Just a little longer. We've got a war to win." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Damage control teams fighting fires and sealing breaches, pilots pushing their crafts to the limit as they dueled with Zorgan fighter screens, gunners pouring shot after shot into the enemy's hulls. And it was working. For all their savagery, the Zorgans had never faced a foe like humanity. They had preyed on the weak, the unprepared. They had no tactics for an enemy that could match their ferocity and exceed their technology. One by one, the Zorgan ships began to fall, their hulls cracking under the relentless human assault. The Indomitable, scorched and battered but unbowed, led the final push, a spear of human resolve piercing the heart of the Zorgan fleet. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The remaining Zorgan ships fled, jumping away into the safety of hyperspace. The invincible armada had been shattered, sent running by the Deathworlders they had dared to underestimate. In the sudden silence of victory, Admiral Novak allowed herself a moment to slump in her chair, exhaustion and relief warring on her face. They had won the day, but at a cost. Good ships and good crew had been lost, a price paid in blood for the Galari's survival. But as the reports flooded in, as the Indomitable limped back to Galar Prime, and the cheers of the Galari echoed through the comms, Novak knew it had been worth it. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same. An unlikely alliance. In the aftermath of the great battle, a strange new reality settled over Galar Prime. The streets of the Crystal City, once echoing with the fearful whispers of a population awaiting conquest, now thrummed with a cautious but growing hope. And everywhere, there were humans. Earth's engineers swarmed over the planet's battered defenses, repairing and reinforcing with a speed and ingenuity that left the Galari artisans in awe. In the grand halls of the Galari academies, human scientists and Galari scholars pored over data from the battle, seeking to understand the Zorgan weapons and develop countermeasures. And in the chambers of the High Council, Admiral Novak and Supreme Counselor Verum found themselves in long hours of discussion, mapping out the future of their suddenly intertwined civilizations. "We owe you a debt we can never repay," Verum said, his voice thick with emotion. "You came to our aid when no one else would, when everyone, even ourselves, thought you too dangerous to trust. We were wrong." Novak shook her head. "You don't owe us anything. Helping those in need, standing up to bullies and tyrants, that's just what humans do. It's who we are." Verum's bioluminescence flickered with curiosity. "But why? Why risk so much for a species you didn't even know?" Novak was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant. "Because we remember," she said at last. "We remember what it was like to be weak, to be at the mercy of forces beyond our control. We remember the toll of our own cruelty, the scars we inflicted on each other. And we remember the strength we found in unity, in standing together against the darkness." She met Verum's gaze, her eyes fierce with conviction. "We see ourselves in you, Counselor. A species striving for peace, for knowledge, for a better way. If we let the strong prey on the weak, if we turn our backs on those who need us, then what does our strength mean? What's the point of being a Deathworlder if we don't use our power to protect life? In that moment, an understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared values, of common hopes and dreams that transcended the vastly different worlds that had shaped them. Human and Galari, Deathworlder and Peacemaker, united in purpose. And so, as the ships of the joint Human-Galari task force lifted off from the surface, setting course for the heart of Zorgan space, it was with a new resolve. They would take the fight to the enemy, dismantle their war machine, and ensure that no other species would suffer as the Galari had. The friendship forged in battle would be the foundation of a new era, an era where the strong would protect the weak, where the wisdom of the peaceful would temper the might of the warriors. An era of unity against the forces of conquest and oppression. The Deathworlders had come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, just perhaps, it would be better. Part 6. Proving Grounds. Deep in the heart of Zorgan space, 1,000 warships hung in the void, their hulls bristling with weapons of planetary annihilation. Aboard the command dreadnought, Warlord Kragoth brooded on his throne of twisted metal, his rage simmering like a star on the verge of nova. The news of his fleet's defeat at Galar Prime had spread like wildfire, each retelling of the human victory, a fresh insult to Kragoth's pride. The Zorgan Imperium had never known defeat, had never faced a foe that could match their savagery. And yet these upstart Deathworlders, these soft-skinned mammals from an insignificant blue world, had shattered his armada, sent his warriors fleeing like whipped curs. It was intolerable, it was unforgivable, and it would be avenged. Summon the fleet, Kragoth growled to his attendants, his voice the rumble of distant thunder. Every ship, every soldier. We will crush these humans, grind their bones to dust, and scatter them on the solar winds. We will teach the galaxy the price of defying the Zorgan Imperium. But even as his forces marshaled, even as the might of the Imperium gathered for a final, crushing assault, another fleet was moving through the stars with grim purpose. The joint Human-Galari task force, 100 ships strong, sliced through Zorgan space like a dagger, striking at supply lines, communications hubs, and staging areas. They were a surgical strike, a precise and deadly blow aimed at crippling the Imperium's ability to wage war. Aboard the EDS Indomitable, Admiral Novak and Supreme Counselor Varum watched the action unfold, human and Galari crew working in seamless unison around them. It was a sight that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. The Deathworlders and the Peacekeepers united in common cause. But there was little time to reflect on the marvel of their alliance. The Zorgan response was swift and brutal, a tidal wave of ships and fire that threatened to engulf the task force at every turn. The battles were fierce, desperate affairs, each victory bought with blood and toil. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Human-Galari alliance held strong. The humans fought with a tenacity and skill that astounded their allies, their ships dancing through the enemy fire like wolves among sheep. And the Galari, once so timid, found a new resolve under the inspiration of their human friends, their technolo seamlessly integrated into the human tactics. In the heart of the fray, Admiral Novak led by example, her leadership a beacon of resolve among the brutal realities of the proving grounds of Galari stand. Ship by ship, world by world, they beat back the Zorgan advance, shattering the myth of the Imperium's invincibility. But the greatest test was yet to come. On the screen of the Indomitable's bridge, a vast armada appeared, a wall of metal and hate that stretched from horizon to horizon. At its heart was Warlord Kragoth's dreadnought, a beast of a ship that dwarfed even the mighty human battleships. "This is it," Novak said softly, her eyes hard as flint. "The final push. Everything we've fought for, every sacrifice we've made, it all comes down to this." Varum nodded, his own resolve unwavering. "We stand with you, Admiral, to the end." The battle that followed would echo through the ages, a legend whispered in reverent tones by generations yet unborn. The Zorgan fleet, vast and terrible, crashed against the shield wall of the human Galari alliance like a tidal wave against a cliff face. Lasers flashed, missiles screamed, hulls buckled and shattered under the onslaught. At the heart of the storm, the Indomitable and Kragoth's dreadnought dueled like titans, their shields flaring, their weapons blazing with the fury of suns. On the bridge, Novik gritted her teeth as the ship shuddered around her, consoles sparking, bulkheads groaning under the strain. But she did not yield, could not yield. Inch by bloody inch, the Alliance pushed back against the Zorgan tide. For every ship they lost, they took 3, 5, 10 of the enemy with them. They fought with a unity of purpose, a bond forged in the fires of war and tempered by the recognition of their shared values. And then, in a final, blinding flash of light, it was over. Kragoth's dreadnought, its shields finally failing under the relentless barrage, erupted into a miniature sun, consuming the warlord and his hate in a pyre of cleansing fire. In the sudden silence that followed, a cheer went up from the Allied ships, a cry of victory, of vindication, of a universe changed forever. The Zorgan fleet, leaderless and broken, scattered to the winds, the Imperium's power shattered beyond repair. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Novik slumped in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. Supreme Counselor Verum laid a gentle hand on her shoulder, his touch a gesture of gratitude and respect. "You've saved us," he said softly. "Saved us all. We came to you in desperation, hoping for a savior, and you became our friends, our family. The galaxy will never forget what you've done here." Novik managed a tired smile. "We did it together, Counselor. Human and Galari, standing as one. That's the real victory here. Not just the defeat of the Zorgans, but the birth of something new. A fellowship of species, united in the belief that compassion and courage can conquer any darkness." As the battered but victorious fleet set course for home, Novik let her gaze drift to the stars, to the infinite possibilities that now lay open before them. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and had done so not as conquerors, but as protectors, as friends. The Deathworlders had come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. And as Novik looked to the future, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them the same way they had faced the Zorgans, together, as one, a shining beacon of unity in a universe too long divided by fear and mistrust. The stars were theirs now, not to conquer, but to explore, to understand, to share. A new era had dawned, and Novik could hardly wait to see what wonders it would bring. The end.